They thought it was just another drill, another chance to prove who controlled the mats. So when they ripped her helmet off mid-spar, laughed about it, treated it like dominance instead of disrespect, they thought they'd won. But 3 days later, in front of the entire compound, she didn't shout, she didn't flinch, and she didn't give them a second chance. Because when she stepped into that cage, she didn't just fight back. She dismantled them. Clean, controlled, no rage, pure regulation. By the time their bodies hit the floor, respect didn't need to be demanded. It was already earned. Before we show you the moment they realized who they were really dealing with, and the takedown that shut the whole room silent, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. Because today's story, she didn't need backup. She only needed them to swing first. The morning air hung thick with humidity and diesel. Behind the fencing, a range buzzer sounded 3 times, just a reset. On the tarmac near the auxiliary gym, boots moved like clockwork. Elbows slammed pads. Sweat hit the mats. It was evaluation week at Fort Claiborne, one of the toughest joint combat readiness hubs on the southern coast. Here, everyone was being judged. SEAL teams rotated through for pressure testing. Marine CQC instructors oversaw sparring. Air Force specialists watched timing metrics from the ops tower. Respect wasn't earned with rank. It came from bruises, breath control, and knowing exactly how far you could push before command stepped in. Lieutenant Avery Camden didn't talk much. She didn't have to. The only woman in the rotating SEAL platoon. She'd been through 3 combat deployments, carried a spotless record, and moved like the mat owed her nothing. Her gear was squared away to the inch, no loose straps, no crooked screws. She walked quiet, steady, without the swagger that filled most drill bays. Some noticed, others didn't. See her posture? Someone muttered near the weight racks. Too stiff. She moves like a medic, not a shooter. Another scoffed. Look at her gear. It's decorative. She ignored every word, tightening her chin strap and joining warm-ups like it was any other day. Watching her were 2 men who loved enforcing Claiborne's unwritten rules. Gunnery Sergeant Mitch Draven and Corporal Eli Voss. Marine instructors, excellent with technique but even better at pressure dominance. They didn't run drills. They ran initiations. Everyone called it realism training, but everyone knew the truth, hazing with plausible deniability. Bet she breaks in 5 minutes, Draven muttered. 3 if we double press, Voss replied, cracking his gloves. They didn't hate her, not personally, but Claiborne had one rule. If you walked in quiet, you left on your back unless you proved otherwise. The commander called the first round. Camden stepped into formation like she'd been there for years. Crisp steps, steady breath, and the subtle way she rolled her knuckles, left over right, made one recruit stop smiling, because the loud operators were easy to read. But the silent ones? You only heard them after everything broke. The drill block was Phase 4, simulated capture recovery. Close quarters response. One trainee acted as the compromised asset. The others formed a rapid containment team. Stress ran high, but rules were strict. No excessive head strikes, no helmet interference, no gear tampering unless pre-cleared. But rules never mattered to Draven and Voss. Their group, 6 rotating SEALs and 3 Marines, stood along the inner ring while the instructors demonstrated proper positioning. Except with those 2, it was always more show than instruction. Elbows hit pads too hard. Shoves carried unnecessary follow-through. A new SEAL recruit got slammed hard enough to rattle his ribs. No one said a word. Then it was Camden's turn. She stepped onto the mat, expression calm, breath steady behind her mouthguard. Voss circled left while Draven closed in behind her. A standard pincer move supposed to test coordination under chaos. But from the way Draven grinned, something else was coming. The first contact was clean. Avery broke the mock grip and reset. But before she could pivot, Voss lunged sideways and drove his forearm into the back of her helmet. Her head snapped forward. Not enough to injure, but enough to stun. Gasps rippled from the benches. It was staged to look accidental, but everyone knew it wasn't. She stumbled 1 step, recovered, adjusted her helmet, And that's when Draven made his move. He didn't strike, he yanked. Both hands twisted around her helmet and tore it clean off. The chin strap snapped. Hard plastic scraped her cheek. Her braid fell loose as the helmet hit the floor beside the gear bins. Silence. Even the other instructors froze. Draven smirked. Voss laughed. Guess she doesn't need headgear if she's not gonna use it. Avery didn't move for 5 full seconds. Chin raised slightly, cheek reddened, breath calm. Then she bent down, picked up her helmet and dusted it off. No words, no glare, no complaint to command. She simply walked off the mat and clipped the broken helmet to her belt. No protest, no escalation. But everyone in that room felt it, deep, sharp in the back of their teeth. This wasn't training anymore. It was bait, and they'd just taken it. Whispers followed her off the mat. Did they really rip it off? She didn't even react. Yeah, but she didn't say anything either. That's not how you hold ground. By the time she reached the edge of the floor, the tone had shifted to quiet mockery. The kind that festers just enough to spread. One instructor chuckled. You gotta show teeth around here, or they'll eat you alive. But Lieutenant Avery Camden wasn't interested in theatrics. She stepped into the far corner of the gear bay, crouched low, and examined her helmet. Her fingers traced the fractured seam along the left temple where Voss's elbow hit. The casing hadn't split, but the shock mark was clear. A curved white scuff, proof of intent. She rewound the chin pad with tape, adjusted the rear brace until it clicked, then slid the helmet back on. A few yards away, Draven leaned against the chain link divider, arms crossed. No concern, no apology. He didn't see a threat, just someone who absorbed one. Avery refastened her gloves and rejoined the rotation line like nothing had happened. But someone else had seen everything. On the upper mezzanine, Master Chief Enrique Moro, a man whose reputation outweighed most command ranks, hadn't looked away since the helmet hit the floor. He leaned forward now, arms on the railing, eyes locked on her as she scanned the upper level. Their eyes met for a brief second. No nod, no signal, but the silence said plenty. He'd seen it, all of it, and he wasn't the only one. Still, no reports were filed, no accusations made. Avery didn't speak about it to anyone. Avery finished the rest of the drill cycle with the same calm focus she'd started with. But the psychological field had already shifted. Draven and Voss believed they'd sent a message, that her silence meant submission, that her composure meant concession. What they didn't understand was simple. Real SEALs don't fight to be noticed. They wait, they measure, and when the time is right, they answer fully. By the next morning, the central hallway board had been updated. Fresh marker. New entry. Advanced Combat Response Drill. Observation segment Friday 1600 hours. Lead Evaluator. Master Chief Enrique Moro. Pairing. Sergeant Mitch Draven / Corporal Eli Voss. Control insert. Lieutenant A. Camden. No explanation. No red flags. Just another line on the rotation sheet. But everyone noticed, because these evaluation slots usually went to instructors with clean records, not hotheads who liked bending rules. And the fact that Camden was the designated insert, that wasn't random. That was deliberate. The whispers started immediately. You see this? A seer recruit muttered. They're gonna flatten her again. Or try, someone else said. Later in the locker row, Voss laughed loud enough to echo. Guess someone thinks she's ready for round 2. Draven leaned against the steel frame, toothpick in his teeth. She better be. They walked around like they were headlining a show. No fear, no strategy, just loud confidence. To them, this was a stage. The punchline to the joke they thought they'd begun 2 days earlier. Avery said nothing. She didn't react. She didn't watch them. She didn't feed the buzz. She taped her wrists alone, checking each rap for tension. No extra padding, nothing hidden. Just clean alignment, knuckles to palm. Her gloves were basic regulation. Her name strip was half faded on the Velcro. And still, her hands were steady, like calm water before an explosion. She closed her locker gently, tied the final loop on her boots, and slid her helmet strap into place. Not too tight, not too loose, just ready. While the unit imagined blood, humiliation, another beat-down story they'd gossip about after hours, Avery wasn't thinking about any of them. She was thinking about foot placement, timing, joint vulnerability, centerline targets, and how many seconds it would take for silence to swallow the room. Because Draven and Voss had been right about one thing. She hadn't answered yet. But they mistook silence for fear, and they mistook the drill for control. At exactly 15:57, Avery stepped onto the mat. 3 minutes early. Helmet on. Gloves secured. No theatrics. No waiting for applause. This wasn't performance. This was correction. And by then, it was already too late for them to see it coming. The sparring cage had been cleared and reset. Fresh chalk lines. New floor padding installed the night before. Everything looked clean and regulated. But the tension in the air made the space feel anything but controlled. A semicircle of instructors stood along the western wall. Arms crossed, bodies leaning forward, silent. Above them, on the observation rail, 3 senior officers watched, including Master Chief Enrique Moro, clipboard in hand, stylus capped, eyes locked on the 3 figures inside the cage. Draven bounced lightly on the balls of his feet. Loose, casual, already convinced he'd won. His compression shirt clung to his back, elbows flexed as if warming up for a show. He shot Voss a grin, like they were starting a friendly scrimmage instead of a formal evaluation. Avery Camden stood 6 feet from them, shoulders square, hands relaxed at her sides. Her helmet sat low and clean, strap secured. She rolled her neck once and tightened her left glove strap with precise, surgical focus. Her jaw never shifted. Ready? The drill lead called. Always, Draven said. Avery didn't speak. She simply nodded. The first exchange was textbook. Voss approached from an angle, quick lateral footwork like a flanking move. Avery adjusted calmly, no counter, no aggression, just positioning. Draven followed with a high feint and low sweep. She stepped out of range and let him reset. Clean, controlled, almost boring. A few instructors exchanged glances. Maybe this wouldn't be a spectacle. Draven tried to stir her. Loosening you up, Lieutenant. Don't freeze on us now. No reply. Round 2 brought more energy. Voss rushed her shoulder first, trying to drive her into the cage wall. She absorbed it, pivoted sharply, and his shoulder slammed into the padding instead of her core. Avery returned to center, still calm, still unreadable. No retaliation, no spark. Draven's expression tightened. His movements grew faster. He faked a mid-level punch, closed distance, and struck her guard. She absorbed the hit on her forearm and reset without a reaction. The room grew uneasy. Where was her blowback? Where was the anger? Frustrated, Draven signaled Voss. A press. Together, they feigned a crossover maneuver, rare informal sparring. Voss went low, Draven high. And then it happened. Voss didn't reach for her torso. He reached for her helmet again. Open palm. Intentional. The same smug grin from 2 days earlier. He reached, but he never made contact. Avery snapped her right leg into a defensive chamber, pivoted hard, and swept him to the ground. Voss hit the mat with a thud so sharp the back row flinched. Draven froze. Avery didn't. She rotated toward him, guard up, eyes locked. Her hands were no longer loose, they were dialed in. Draven stepped back, confused, but his ego outran his judgment. He lunged, and ran straight into the full-braced impact of her elbow smashing into his jaw. He stumbled, not down, not yet, but shaken. Avery didn't chase him. She waited just like she had all week. Waited for him to think he still had the upper hand. Waited for him to swing again. He did, and that's when the shift hit like a switchblade. She ducked, twisted, and caught his arm mid-motion. And in less than 2 seconds, Gunnery Sergeant Mitch Draven was down. Not just down, incapacitated. A joint lock, a nerve press, a clean solar plexus compression. Done with the kind of quiet that made the room feel louder. In that moment, no one was confused anymore. This wasn't a sparring match. It was a correction, and it had only begun. Draven tried to roll, but his left arm wouldn't respond. His breath came short, not from pain yet, but from pure confusion. Across the mat, Corporal Eli Voss groaned and clutched his ribs, blinking like he wasn't sure how he'd hit the floor. And standing between them was Lieutenant Avery Camden. Helmet still on. No sweat. Breathing slow and controlled. One of the observers stepped forward toward the cage, unsure whether this was still training or something far more serious. Master Chief Enrique Moro lifted one hand from the railing. "Don't intervene." Draven forced himself up to one knee, his jaw clenched, his pride screaming louder than the bruise forming along his ribs. He pushed off the mat, trying to finish the drill with whatever dignity he had left. That was his final mistake. He lunged without a plan. Camden met him mid-stride. What followed wasn't chaotic. It was clinical. Her left forearm snapped upward into his tricep, folding his arm before it could extend. Her right hand caught his jawline, not striking, just redirecting. His body spun out of his own control, and while he tried to recover his footing, her boot tapped the inside of his left leg with surgical precision. His knee collapsed. Gravity finished the rest. Draven hit the mat again. Hard. He gasped. Camden knelt beside him and, in a flash, secured a shoulder pin with one elbow and applied a controlled wrist torque with the other. Pop. Not a break, but close. His scream came out more shocked than hurt. She released instantly, stepped back, and let him crawl across the mat. Voss finally pushed up to all fours, only to look up and see Camden standing over him. Not triumphant, not angry, just a look that said, "This is what silence earns." He tried to rise. She didn't move. He paused, then sat back down. Up on the observation rail, Master Chief Enrique Moro finally uncapped his stylus and began writing. No one else moved. No one spoke. The only sounds in the bay were the soft wind tapping against the metal siding, and the ragged breaths of two men who had just been dismantled without a single word. Lieutenant Avery Camden didn't gloat. She didn't look toward the gallery. She simply walked to the center line, lowered into a controlled crouch and tapped her gloves off 1-2. Then she stood, removed her helmet, and revealed the same calm expression she'd worn throughout. No sweat, just discipline. She looked to the drill officer. One nod. Demonstration complete. Then she turned forward again and walked off the mat. Steady, composed, hands loose at her sides. Behind her, Gunnery Sergeant Mitch Draven was still on his knees. Corporal Eli Voss hadn't made it past sitting upright. No one clapped. No one cheered. Because when correction is this clean, and the power behind it is real, you don't celebrate it. You remember it. You remember the silence. You remember the moment no one dared reach for a helmet again. Command didn't need to ask for a report. The footage said everything. By evening, the demonstration had already circulated through internal channels, evaluator logs, sensor sync reviews, timestamp telemetry. The mat's pressure plates showed 4 clean impact points during Camden's counter-engagement. All within legal limits. All perfectly timed. Draven and Voss had cleared medical. Nothing broken, nothing permanent. What did break was their authority. And when Master Chief Moro submitted the review summary, the formal language followed immediately. Observe deviation from protocol conduct during prior training phase. Failure to maintain protective gear boundaries. Resulting escalation within sanctioned sparring environment. Resolved via operator-level correction under evaluation oversight. Translation. They started it. She finished it. And command wasn't going to cover for them. By the next morning, both instructors' names were gone from the training boards. Not reassigned, removed. Temporary suspension pending procedural review. No formal charges. No brig time. But in a place like this, silence was worse. Their lockers stayed shut. Nobody touched them. The hallway that used to echo with Voss's jokes was dead quiet. And Draven, the one who always held court near the sparring pad every morning, never showed. Word was he packed his gear and left before sunrise. No one watched him go. Lieutenant Avery Camden arrived like she always did. Same routine. No announcement. No satisfaction. She clipped her gear into place, warmed up alone, then stood at the edge of Mat 2 while the next instructor ran the briefing. At one point, a junior Marine stepped toward her. One of those quiet types who respected more than he knew how to express. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then just nodded once. She didn't reply. Not dismissive, she just didn't need to. When the drill started, she rotated in normally. Movements fluid, eyes forward. But something had shifted. People gave her space now. Not from fear. Not intimidation. Recognition. Because there's a difference between surviving the system and resetting it without saying a word. Lieutenant Avery Camden had done both. For the brass, the incident didn't need further attention. Nothing builds discipline like exposure. And sometimes the loudest thing a Navy SEAL can do is break silence with a bruise. The compound didn't shut down. Drills continued. Recruits lined up for ruck inspections. Mats were scrubbed. And the gym clock buzzed on the hour, like it always had. But the atmosphere had shifted. The entire place seemed to step back and reconsider its own volume. The instructors who remained spoke less. A few nodded more than usual. Some gave corrections quietly. Even the cocky ones stopped slapping backs after drills. No one mentioned Draven or Voss, but everyone adjusted. Camden didn't change. She ran her morning grip routine on the same worn pads. Timed her foot drills to her playlist. Drank black coffee. Retaped her left knuckle the same way, careful, clean, unhurried. The mat wasn't hers. She didn't claim it. She simply walked on, stayed sharp, and earned the space around her. People moved aside without thinking. It wasn't intimidation. Camden didn't carry heat or menace. It was recognition earned, not demanded. The silence around her spoke louder than words ever could. One afternoon, while adjusting resistance bands near the south wall, a pair of new recruits paused mid-drill. "That's her," one whispered. The other nodded, eyes fixed on her form. Every step controlled. Spine straight, eyes forward. Across the gym, an older instructor leaned against the rail, arms crossed. "Never seen anyone clear a mess that clean," he muttered. No one replied. There was nothing to add. Later that week, during open floor conditioning, Camden finished a set early and stepped onto mat 3. It was empty. Most personnel were still rotating between circuits. She didn't call for a partner, didn't signal sparring. She just stood there, helmet on, arms relaxed. One step forward, another, a slow, deliberate circle tracing the edge of the mat. Boots scuffed lightly across the vinyl. Steady, controlled, like she was marking a boundary only she could see. When she reached the center again, she stopped and faced outward. No one dared join her, not because they weren't invited, but because everyone finally understood who set the tempo. Would you have stayed calm if someone crossed a line like that? Or would you have reacted instantly? Do you think controlled discipline is stronger than explosive anger in moments of disrespect? Drop your answers in the comments, we read every single one. Tap like, hit subscribe, and press the bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's story. Share this with someone who thinks loud means strong, and show them what real control looks like. While our other videos are popping up on your screen right now, watch those next. We'll see you tomorrow.